Stream is live. We're on. Can you peace,
Good
peace,
evening,
peace, everyone?
folks. How y'all doing? I am here with Brother Maurice. We're gonna be talking about a lot of things tonight. This evening, a lot of things happened. We have a group of experts that just came out. Was actually published on December 27th, 2024. Because now we are in 2020. Here, kind of like have a conversation with you, kind of like break down and help folks in the audience to know what's going on, what is written in that reports, what are the things that what are the findings, what are the things that we need to know, and most importantly, what do they need, what do they mean for the Congo? But
Right.
before we dive in, how are you doing, Brother Maurice?
Good, man. Good. In spite of all the madness going on, I was just on with some folks from Los Angeles, and just crazy what's unfolding in Los Angeles with the forest fires and how it's affecting so many people. And they're sharing with me how a lot of the areas that are burned down are, with in the wealthy area of Los Angeles. But they figure that those folks they have insurance, they can recover. But brown and black folks, they're catching hell in the sense that when they lose their homes due to the fire, apparently insurance companies had canceled insurance a little while back, and they lose everything. So it's just really devastation is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
To say the
Yeah,
least.
it's pretty sad what's going on. And climate change is obviously affecting everyone, rich, poor. And the thing that I also ask you to kind of comment on what you're saying is what are we doing as a society to, I don't want to say prevent it, but at least mitigate, right? Mitigate what's going on, because we're not doing anything for climate change, but what are we doing to actually like mitigate that so that the most vulnerable are not impacted or impacted the least? But we've seen rich areas, and then you mentioned in LA. So it would be really interesting to see what the government, either this current administration or the upcoming one, will be doing in terms of like dealing with wildfire. So
Yeah. In fact, the folks are asking the folks there, what's the government doing at the city level, the state level, federal, and they weren't very optimistic about intervention of the government. But what we've seen, whether it's Los Angeles, Gaetan, or in and around Goma or Palestine, what we've seen is people responding. They're sharing stories of how folks I was speaking to talking about how they're opening up their homes for folks who have lost their homes. How ordinary people are coming to the side of folks who've lost everything. So we see that. That's one thing that in the midst of crises of this nature, you see sometimes you see the worst, but you certainly see the best that come out of ordinary people. And as I said, whether it's happening in Congo or Palestine or elsewhere, whether it's natural or human disaster, we see that the tremendous amount of hope in your fellow, in your neighbor, even somebody who may not even know you, or, they open up their homes and open up their hearts to support. So that's very encouraging, to say the least. Hope we didn't lose you.
Yeah. Thanks for those words. And
yeah,
and talking about that solidarity. What did you say?
Oh, yeah, no, I was saying that folks there in LA on the ground, they're going to be
Yeah, I
sharing
was saying,
some
talking about that
sources.
solidarity.
No, I was just saying that they're going to be sharing some sources with us where people can support folks on the front lines in Los Angeles. So we'll definitely be sharing that to people as we get them.
Yeah. And tonight or this evening, you reached out to me and said, "Hey, Gaten, let's talk about the Congo." And then that subject is really dear to my heart. And I was like, "Oh, about the UN report," and I haven't read it until last night, and read it,
You you
finished it
went into
last
beast
night, went to
mode.
bed super late.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but what
That's a
are your
hundred and
impression
hundred
if
and
you can
sixty
first
six
like
hundred and sixty
contextualize
six
like
pages.
yes, 166 pages, yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, not too many people are reading those
Yeah,
reports.
106. But yeah, if you can contextualize like what the context of this the report, what it says,
Yes.
and yeah, and then we can
Well,
kind of like break down per like point. But
hmm
yeah, I have the floor. Yeah.
yeah. Even before we get into to the reports, right? We want to share with folks. Some people may be joining us for the first time, and uh, you know, a question that we often get is, where did this all start? Where did this conflict in the Congo come about? These atrocities, the genocide that everybody's talking about, and it's so crucial to lay the framework for it. Right, with Congolese people, right? The Congolese people have been victims of a 3-decade war of aggression and plunder, right, by Congo's neighbors. A war of aggression and plunder that wouldn't have happened, or wouldn't be still happening without the complicity, the backing of the United States government, the UK government, the European Union, France. So these Western powers, right, have a vested interest in the instability of the Congo. It's evident that that is the case because what the backing of Paul Kagame of Rwanda and Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, both countries and leaders. Uh, as long as they've been in power, those two leaders, the conflict has continued. The Congolese people have been caught in a death trap, right? The suffering and
Hmm.
the devastation that's been visited upon the Congolese people are in tandem with the tenure of Kagame and Museveni in power, right? And these are two leaders that Bill Clinton, when we have to go back to the Clinton administration in the 1990s, right? So they're the new breed of African leaders. They call them the Renaissance leaders, right? There's if you do a search on the internet called the Entebbe Principles, the city in Uganda, the Entebbe Principles, you see what the Clinton administration was embracing as it relates to these two leaders, and the Kagame, Museveni, they have really a number of things in common. These Renaissance leaders, these new breed of leaders, what the U.S. and the West call the Pan-African leaders, they they've invaded neighboring countries, right? They're authoritarian figures, right? That means
Hmm.
they run a repressive state, right? And they have the blood of millions of Africans on their hands. These guys, they've committed war crimes, crimes against humanity, right? Atrocities. The United Nations says that if brought in front of a competent court, the Rwandan soldiers could be tried for crimes of genocide in the Congo, right? So this is the context that we're talking about. The Congolese government has successfully brought uh, the case against the Ugandan government, the International Court of Justice in 2005, which the Ugandan government has just in 2024 started paying reparations to the Congo as a result of that ruling. They had tried to bring the Rwandan government, but Rwanda wasn't party to the court. So this is a context in which we're talking about this 30-year war of aggression that has been maintained primarily because of Western intervention, the United States in particular, United Kingdom, running diplomatic interference, providing political cover, not dissimilar from what we see them doing in Palestine, how they provide cover for Israel and Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people. The parallels are quite striking, Gaitan. And really, of late, within we've seen these two governments. They've invaded the Congo twice, 1996, 1998. They have sponsored militia groups inside of the Congo. And they continue to do that to this day. They have fought each other. Their militaries, when they disagree with each other, they fought each other on Congolese soil, killing Congolese, injuring Congolese, displacing Congolese. And with all of this after 3 decades, they haven't been brought to account, right, for those crimes that they've committed. And since 2021, we see that the Rwandan government, right, Paul Kagame, has, for all intents and purposes, resuscitated an M23 that was defeated, right? Defeated but not necessarily disbanded in 2012. They retreated back into Uganda, retreated back into Rwanda, and they were. It's instructive for us to know how they were defeated. It was through a series of policies and actions. Had the Congolese military being strengthened and under leadership of the likes of Mamadou Ndala, brave Congolese figure who was willing to put his life down for the people, selfless, right? Where he prioritizes the people and the nation, and not his own personal interests. And then you had Southern African Development Community through the African Union, right? And the United Nations strengthening its mandate. The largest UN troops, peacekeeping troops are in the Congo. So they strengthened the mandate where the UN could take an offensive posture and bring in what they call the Force Intervention Brigade, which brought Malawian, South African, and Tanzanian troops in to combat Rwanda's militia in the Congo, which is the M23. We talked about 2012. Then you had a diplomatic offensive where there was pressure put on then the Obama administration to the point where he withheld military aid from Rwanda. Not a lot, but with the U.S. withholding something, European nations withheld tens of millions of dollars from Rwanda. So internal offensive on the part of the Congolese military, regional support on the part of the Southern African Development Community and through the African Union and in part the United Nations, and then a diplomatic offensive with pressure being put on the United States. So what we have today, we don't see the same kind of offensive since the Rwandan government has resuscitated the M23. The M23 was defeated, right? The Rwandan government resuscitated them in 2021, and many, if you read analysts, they say that part of the reason for the resuscitation of the M23 on the part of the Rwandan government was to destabilize and disrupt what was happening in Eastern Congo, in the sense that there's a rapprochement with Uganda and the DRC. We're building roads, establishing trade relations that Rwanda felt will cut them out because they see Eastern Congo really as their domain, right? The Rwandan government and to some extent the Ugandan government, and they join together and then they pull apart. Either way, whether they're together or apart, both nations see Eastern Congo as their domain, and a way for them to maintain control of Eastern Congo is to destabilize the region by sponsoring militia groups, by sending in their soldiers, by occupying territory. And what we have today is a situation where, according to the latest group of experts report. And these reports they pretty much say the same thing over and over again. Like the Rwandan soldiers that are in Eastern Congo, to the tune of about 4,000 soldiers or so. The Rwandan military leadership that's and the report that came out recently is very specific as to how the Rwandan leadership is what they say is that they're systematically the M23, right? It's been systematically supported by the Rwandan Defense Force from enable them to gain significant territory. And they're going to say, including mineral-rich territory like Walikali, for example, Walikali territory, right? They received, the M23 received advanced military technology, right? And that advanced military technology is primarily operated by the Rwandan Defense Forces, right? Which, and this, the report says this has ensured the military dominance of the M23 and the Alliance Fleuve Congo River Alliance, which is another group in North Kivu, right? So the report gets into very granular detail, very specific ways in which it leaves no doubt in terms of Rwandan soldiers being on the ground in Eastern Congo, occupying territory. Some people say that it's larger than the size of Rwanda itself, providing operation, logistical support, leadership, military equipment, funding, just everything you can think of that would be needed for this type of occupation to take place, which wouldn't occur without the Rwandan support. So we have a connection here. Militia groups, Rwandan soldiers occupying Eastern Congo. The militia groups that's there, they claim to be they have contention with the Congolese government, would not be able to do what they're doing without the military backing of Rwanda and the presence of Rwandan soldiers. And by extension, the Rwandan government wouldn't be able to do what it's doing in Eastern Congo, and it has been doing for the past 3 decades without the backing of the West. This time, it appears, according to reports that we're getting, that France is the main backer of Rwanda. France is the main Western nation that's preventing accountability and preventing justice to be delivered and preventing any kind of action to be taken against the Rwandan government. And the reason that's being presented for France being an obstacle is that the Rwandan military, which is a mercenary military that it hires out to corporations, in this case, Total Energies of France, who have natural gas interests in Mozambique, Cabo Delgado region. You have the Rwandan military working with Total to secure its concessions there in Mozambique. And as a result of that, Rwanda has been rewarded by France. And I remember Rwanda, Paul Kagame and Macron, as they've grown closer, and we saw this when Rwanda vied to become the head of the Francophonie. The Francophonie is the French corollary to the Commonwealth. These are colonial relics, neo-colonial institutions. And it's really interesting, just as a side note, how it is that we see all along West Africa, right? Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Senegal, Chad. People are trying to get rid of the French. But Paul Kagame, which many young Africans claim to be a Pan-Africanist and a model leader, he sought to get up into the Francophonie, which is France's soft power arm in Africa and elsewhere. And here it is that you have a figure that young Africans are holding up and celebrating, whose former foreign minister, Louise Mushikawabo, is the Secretary General of the Francophonie. So the contradiction in terms of Kagame professing Pan-Africanism or being seen as a Pan-Africanist or being seen as a model for leadership in Africa, and his embrace and firmly being ensconced in partnership and collaboration with Macron of France clearly demonstrates that the evidence demonstrates that he's in the camp of the agents of neocolonialism in Africa. So he's benefited from millions of dollars from the European Union at the behest of France. As he's occupying Eastern Congo, this is Kagame that we're talking about, the European Union itself entered into a critical minerals deal with Kagame to get access to critical minerals that are found in the Congo, right? Even in this report, right? This report says unequivocally, it says the AFC M23, right, conquered Rubaya, which is the largest coltan mine in the Great Lakes region, right?
Yeah.
So, and then it goes on to say, FCMC, they established a parallel administration controlling mining activities, trade, transport, and taxation of minerals produced. It says at least 150 tons of coltan were fraudulently exported to Rwanda and mixed with Rwandan production, leading to the largest contamination.
The largest, yes.
The largest,
yeah, go ahead.
right?
Yeah.
Leading to the largest contamination of mineral supply chains in the Great Lakes region recorded to date, right? So with this data, this evidence that the militia group, Rwanda's militia group in the Congo, M23, controlling Rubaya, right? The largest coltan mine in the region, and extracting that coltan. With all of this knowledge, the European Union enters into the critical minerals deal with the Rwandan government, right? Now, instead of their holding Rwanda to account for its war of aggression, for violation of international law with having its troops in the Congo, they're rewarding him, rewarding the Rwandan government. So as the Congolese people suffer, as the women are raped, as the children are executed, as they are displaced to the tunes of millions, you have these great powers, quote unquote, rewarding the actions on the part of the Rwandan government as they occupy territory, some say larger than Rwanda itself. So this is the picture, right? Where Kagame continues to be rewarded for his war of aggression, for his plunder, for the atrocities that are being committed, what the United Nations say, if tried in a competent court, and be classified as genocide that the Rwandan forces are committing in the Congo. And that may have been a long intro, but it's so important to lay the foundation or the framework of these reports, right? These structural factors, these systemic forces that are at play against the Congolese people and those women and children that are in the displacement camp in Rosayo and in Bulengo and the dozens of plus displacement camps in Eastern Congo.
Yeah, and thanks for this in-depth, I would say, introduction. And you're right, like there is sometimes, like in terms of like globally, when reading those reports which have been written, published since I think 2004, that a group of experts started doing this work about the Congo, it's mostly the same thing, right? So, but that's why I really want us to like go point by point about the like something new that we just learned, right? So I think the first point that they touched on is the Allied Democratic Forces Ituri in North Kivu, with the Operation Shuja, and then also the connection with Daesh which is what's the other word for Daesh? ISIS.
Yes.
The connection with ISIS, and also the potential alliance between the M23 or the AFC and the ADF, which, by the way, according to the AFC, they denied that.
Right,
So
and that
um,
AFC is Alliance Fleuve Congo, right? Congo River
yeah,
Alliance, right? Congo
yes,
River Alliance.
which includes the M23. It's kind of like the political branch, right? And they
Right,
have the M23 to be the
the
military branch.
military.
Yeah. Um, but can you roughly talk to us briefly about the ADF and why in every report alongside M23 why the ADF is there? Who is the ADF?
Right. So the Allied Democratic Forces, right, really came on the scene in a strong way in 2014. They started committing all kind of terrorist actions, primarily around the Beni Lubero area. They're said to be a rump force that's got contention with Uganda and Museveni. And this report, interestingly enough, says that there's been limited or some success against the Allied Democratic Forces with the Shuja. Is it a Shuja? Is that a correct pronunciation?
Yeah, Shuja operation, yes.
Shuja operation, where basically the Ugandan military, and collaboration with the Congolese military, have gone after the leadership of the ADF, and they've been successful in taking out some of the key leaders of the Allied Democratic Forces and dispersing them. And it says, unfortunately, where they're dispersing them in different parts of the Eastern Congo, as a retaliation, the ADF has been just killing civilians, committing terrorist acts against civilians. Following reports over the years, I've just been so I don't know how to put it, Gaitan. Just you know, Human Rights Watch had done a report on the Allied Democratic Forces a number of years ago, and in the conclusion of the report, they said they couldn't really tell who the Allied Democratic Forces are, right? And then at the same time, there was a narrative, to tie them to ISIS, to tie them to Daesh, to inject the Islamic element in there as an explanation for them. And I'm not sure that I fully embrace that narrative, right? Even though it's presented. If you follow the reports, whether it's the group of experts reports, whether it's Human Rights Watch reports, or even Amnesty, they've reported on a bit over the years. You've seen there's this zone of uncertainty, right, about who they actually are, and it's kind of interesting if the report talks about how Uganda has militia groups. There are Ugandan militia groups that have beef with Uganda in Eastern Congo. And they talk about how there are Rwandan militia groups that have beef with Rwanda in Eastern Congo. And it even goes on to say there are Burundian groups.
Burundi, yeah.
Right? So it, but this is playing out in the east of the Congo. However, what we see is that these nations, particularly Uganda and Rwanda, they make the argument that in order for them to secure, to protect their population, they have to go into Congo, right? So
like the same narrative that we see with Israel, right?
Right, the same. They have to go into Congo, and apparently, it doesn't matter to them, and apparently it doesn't matter to those who finance and back and arm them. How many Congolese die, right? How many Congolese women are raped, right? How many Congolese children are executed and recruited? How many Congolese people are displaced? in the name of security for Uganda and Rwanda, right? So that's the argument
Mm-hmm.
that Kagame just spoke out the other day. He was talking about how it is that the Congolese government let Uganda go in,
Yeah, I saw that
and
video.
you know, and to go
But we
after
don't
its
go
militia
in.
groups, but we don't go in. Now, if you don't know anything about Congo's
Yep.
recent history, then you're like, oh, maybe he has a point. How come they're not let?
They,
No, but Rwanda has gone
he's
into the
lying.
Congo. He's lying, straight out lying,
Yeah.
right? He's
Even
gone.
under even under current president, he's done that.
Yeah, he's gone. Rwandan soldiers have gone in collaboration with the Congolese government
Mm-hmm.
forces to go after the so-called Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, the so-called
FDLR.
FDLR, who Kagame says is a threat to Rwanda, which even the Rwandan ambassador to the Congo, you know, quoted as saying that they're not a threat. They don't represent a threat, right? So you see them going in after these forces, but it's so convenient that as they go after these forces, these negative forces as they call them, they're taking out the coltan, they're taking out the tin, they're taking out the gold, they're taking out the timber. So what does the extraction of gold, timber, coltan have
Has
to
to do with
do
just
with going
security.
after these forces? Right, have to do
And
with security.
and if I may, about the ADS specifically, in that report we learned that in the year 2024 alone, 650 civilians were killed by the ADF, the Allied Democratic Forces.
The
Allied Democratic
Democratic
Forces.
forces. Yeah.
And what you brought up about Human Rights Watch saying that they really couldn't tell who ADF was and what was the objective, what's really the goal. Like nobody knows what the goals are, right? That reminded me of a report that I read, the UN report that I read. I think it was a couple of reports ago. And folks, for context, the United Nations publish reports on the Congo twice a year. There was usually like a midterm, and then there was a final.
Right.
And this one, for some reason, they call it midterm. So I was kind of confused, but they call him a midterm report. And so few reports ago, I think it was last year, a couple years ago, they did talk about the ADF and how they mentioned, according to them, according to the United Nations, that the ADF was the militia groups in the Congo that has killed the most civilian. Um, that's a fact.
Is it
They
the
also
most
said
civilian?
civilians, yes, they that the
Hmm.
ADF
Even more than
kills
Codeco.
more people than, let's say, the M23. That's what they said.
Hmm.
And they also go in depth in terms of like talking about the activity of the ADF, how they were recruited, and then also when Uganda's government announced that they were going to go into Congo to go after the ADF, because during that year there was a terrorist attack that happened on Ugandan soil where
Hmm.
civilians were killed. The Ugandan government went ahead and said that was the ADF that did that, so they need to chase them, go after them, and even if it means crossing the borders and to go to the Congo. And the Congolese government, led by Tshisekedi, gave the okay for that to happen. That was the beginning of the operation between Uganda and Congo a couple years ago. When the group of experts ask to have more information about that specific incident or a terrorist attack, the Ugandan government never gave a response because
Mm.
the UN wants to investigate. You saying that the ADF created this, like people died, a lot of civilian casualties. We understand that. Let us help. Let us help you. We want to investigate, to go to dive more into this question about the ADF and particularly about whether or not they were implicating what happened in your soil. And then the Ugandan government says no. Well, they didn't really say no, but they did not provide any response to that. And
Mm.
to me, I'm just like, you use that as an example to send troops in the Congo, but you don't want to be transparent on what really happened there. And honestly, I always like to throw Israel and Gaza for people to really understand what's going on. It's like, oh, October 7th happened. We empathize. It's horrible. Civilians should not be killed. Let us go see what's going on. No, the Israeli government, as we have seen, they have not let anyone, in terms of, for the longest time, for almost a year, like journalists or nonprofits, to just go in and see with their own eyes. And that's why we have all these lies that were that were spread. It's the same thing that pretty much has been happening in Congo, with Rwanda, with Uganda, particularly because we're talking about the ADF. And on top of that, we had a son of the President Museveni, who has been really, I mean, if you just go into his tweets and you check what he says about militia groups, about the M23, you just ask yourself the questions. Well, the Congolese government or the president said that he's working with you to get rid of militia groups, including M23. But then you have the son of the president saying that, hey, if you touch the M23, you're going to find out, you know what I'm saying? Like, so
I don't even know
I
how
think you
seriously
bring
you
a
can
really
take
good
his
questions, right?
tweets. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say that the Ugandan president has been there for like what, almost 30 years, maybe more than 30 years.
Oh
I have
well, yeah.
only known him ever
Since '86, it's going to be
exactly.
Next year. It'll be what, 40 years, right?
Yeah. So
In
the dude has
2026.
been there. So if he dies, most likely his son will take over, because that's what happened in Congo when Kabila, the
Well,
father,
there's some palace
died.
there's some palace intrigue taking place around that, but we'll see.
Well, I'm just saying that the Uganda is far from being a democracy, so nothing stop him
Right,
to
right.
take over. So it's a possibility. So we, as Congolese, we take seriously his tweets, right? Because
Right.
he's first of all, he's one of a high-ranking official in the military, right? And he's also the son of the president that could potentially take over the country. So going back to what you were saying about even the ADF and then the connection with ISIS, and like how they really want to talk about like Islam did this and they're killing Christians. I'm just like, what's the goal? What's the end goal? And everybody's asking the same questions. And the Human Rights Watch asks that question, and you also pose the exact same question. So, and what about? Did you hear about the supposedly connection or the alliance that the M23 were trying to have with the ADF, which to me was really insane. And by the way, I have to say that the AFC, Alliance du Fleuve Congo, or M23, I would just use M23 to not confuse people. The alliance between M23 and the ADF, which by the way the M23 denied, but I thought that was really insane that the M23 trying to create that coalition to go against the current regime of Tshisekedi. They are really trying to rally a lot of other militia groups behind them. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I know the report says, as the M23 advance into Lubero, right, which is really a ADF, stronghold, have the presence there. They said there are speculations of cooperation. Several sources reported contact, between ADF leadership and individuals who from the ex RCD, Rassemblement
Congolais pour la démocratie.
Pour la démocratie, and be really, I don't want to get too much in the read, but the RCD Kisangani, right, which is you have to go back to the 1990s for the different variations of the RCD, which really the variations among these militia groups like the RCD, Kisangani, it just means like a militia group in the Congo that was either being supported by Uganda or a militia group in the Congo that was being supported by Rwanda, right? So, and this is really critical too, because these, so the reports that said that their contacts have been held, right?
That even happened in Uganda, in Kampala.
Right? Yeah, in Kampala in February of 2024, right? They said they met with associates of Kone Nanga, who's the titular head of the Congo River Alliance.
Alliance.
And they said that They even went as far as to say that the individuals also maintain close contact with the families of members of of the um, of the AFC. So it doesn't get more specific than that, in that there are
Hmm.
contacts and talks. And even the report even says that details of the agreement between the AFC, M23, and ADF, uh, you know, are unclear, right? But what they're saying is that the what they're drawing from it is that there's there are tacit agreements, right, of non-aggression, like a pact. They have what they call a non-aggression pact with the
Hmm.
ADF, which will allow safe
Free passage,
passage,
passage.
right,
Sorry. Hmm.
for folks, especially in the Ituri territory, where the ADF is being driven to now and having a larger uh, presence. So, uh, so you this is what the report is teasing out, which is a bit into the weeds a bit. Uh, for people to uh, for us to really keep our eye on who who are pulling the strings, who are pulling the levers, uh, and have never been held to account. You know,
Mm.
in Kampala, in Kigali, you can talk about all of these different, or not all, but a lot of these different groups, right? But they wouldn't have the potency that they have without Kampala and Kigali. And for our purposes, right, we really want to focus on Kigali with Kagame, focus on Kampala with Uganda, even though now, the Congolese government, which a lot of this is happening in part, because of the weakness of the Congolese government, weakness of the Congolese state, the infiltration of the Congolese military, the lack of organization of the Congolese military. So in the absence of a strong, robust Congolese state, we see these neighboring countries having their way, utilizing militia groups as proxies to secure and protect their economic interests, right?
Uh,
As
yeah.
we see with the gold coming out of the Ituri, as we see with the coltan and the tin, coming out of Walikali, Rubaya. So that's really the what has enabled the conflict to continue unabated because of these the big figures, these heads of state who are pulling the strings of these militia groups in eastern Congo.
It's interesting to close out on Uganda, and then we're gonna move on to M23. Talking about Uganda, when in 2022, I think there was that resurgence of the M23. When I want to remind folks or inform folks that in 2012, and you mentioned that when the M23 was defeated, it was reported about 750 combatant left to Uganda, and also a few hundred to Rwanda as well. But then in 2022, when they came back, the first town that literally that they took over, that they conquered,
Mm-hmm.
was Bunagana. And if
Right.
you look at the map, I really wish I could do that. If you look at the map of Bunagana, it is literally close to
It's on the
Uganda,
border. Yeah, it's a
literally the
border
border.
town. Yeah.
It's literally a border town, exactly. And to me, it was kind of like ridiculous that the Congress government was not, Tshisekedi's regime was not wise enough to understand that Uganda has always played a role, just like Rwanda, and if for that particular case, and then the UN showed that Uganda was used as like a military base to launch those attacks. And as a matter of fact, when the EAC went in, and I mentioned about the tweet of the son of the Ugandan president, they didn't do anything to stop them, and that's when the M23 kept on growing.
Well, Gaetana, I think Tshisekedi, the Congolese government are clear about that. From what we've seen, right, is
Hmm.
that, just think about it. they have their hands full with M23 and Rwanda, right? They don't have the capacity to open another front against Uganda. They really have to play nice with Uganda because the Congolese state, the government is so weak, it just doesn't have that capacity. So what we've been seeing is that folks are saying that they're just letting Uganda have its way there because obviously Bunagana has been occupied for what, over 2 years, almost 2 years
Over
now.
2 years. Yeah.
Over 2 years. And we know that that occupation on the part of the M23 of Bunagana couldn't happen without the complicity of Uganda. You know, at worst, at best, without Uganda even turning a blind eye. So I'm saying what folks are saying is that you know, the Tshisekedi and the Congolese administration is just letting that slide, so to speak. They don't have the capacity. They can't deal with Rwanda itself. I mean, I'm going to say this repeatedly. What folks are saying is that the territory that's been occupied in Eastern Congo is as large, if not larger, than the Rwandan state itself, right? You have the city of Goma that's been cut off. All routes out of Goma are cut off, right? That's why when we saw the boat capsizing on Lake Kivu, killing hundreds of people, is because the road has been cut off. People cannot transport, either people cannot move or transport food along the road toward Minova, right? Which is a normal route that they take. So Goma is, you know, for all intents and purposes, it's isolated. It's surrounded, right, by the Rwandan military and its proxy force. So the Congolese government is not in a position, you know, in spite of the SADC coming in spite of the mercenaries that it's hired from Eastern Europe, in spite of now reshuffling of its the leadership in its military, it's not in a position to deal with both Rwanda and Uganda militarily. They're not in a position to deal with Rwanda militarily, and that's the you know, the sad truth right now. That's why it's so urgent. The situation is so urgent for us to really open up, you know, really push on that diplomatic front. That's where I think there can be some progress made, and especially with Rwanda, because the Rwandan government prides itself on presenting Rwanda as a model, you know, recovering from the genocide, as efficiently run state, and you know, good neighbor, all of that, and they spend a lot of money, you know, to push that propaganda, especially with their Visit Rwanda campaign. You know, that's why, you know, they engage in sports washing with the NBA, bringing the NBA to Africa through Rwanda, with the football clubs like Arsenal, where they establish agreements to marketing agreements where if you go to an Arsenal game or some of these other football games, you see Visit Rwanda on the sleeve or on the back. So
PSG as well.
Yeah, right. So what we're saying is to folks who are following us, to folks who want to do something, want to take action, say, no, don't visit Rwanda. We're coming out with more in terms of a campaign to put pressure on the NBA, put pressure on these football clubs who are sports washing while they're saying visit Rwanda. Rwanda is occupying the Congo, sponsoring militia groups, have this military in Congolese soil, violating international law, being a part of the raping of Congolese women, the execution of Congolese children, all while they're telling you to visit Rwanda. So we you know, I was sharing with you, Gaetan, that Congolese in France in particular, in the diaspora, I know folks have come out and gone in front of the Apple stores. We want to see you in front of the Rwandan embassy. We want to see you, I think Congolese Youth Action Platform, they demonstrated in front of an Arsenal game, if I'm not mistaken, last year. So we at Friends of the Congo in Washington, D.C., were in front of the Rwandan embassy. We marched from the Rwandan embassy to the White House, pointing the finger at Rwanda, calling for Rwanda to lift its occupation of the Congo, marched to the White House, demonstrating, calling on the White House and the Biden administration to stop sponsoring the conflict in the Congo through financial means. Our tax dollars going to support the Rwandan military. So we really, in 2025, we really need more of that. For everybody who is in front of our Apple store, we need you in front of a Rwandan embassy in France, in Belgium, in England, here again in the United States, as we call for more demonstrations. We really have to step up on our end, right, in putting pressure on the Rwandan government. It's very sensitive. It's invested a tremendous amount in propaganda. It's hired, utilize artificial intelligence and bots on social media. Right, there's a report that came out from one of the news agency to promote, to confront anybody who challenges Rwanda's narrative of the way things are in Rwanda and the Congo. So there is an opening and a weakness there that we can attack in the interest of Congolese civilians who are being killed, raped, and displaced by Rwandan military inside of the Congo. And we really need to step up in that area. And speaking of that, we encourage people right now, as you're watching, go to Free Congo, freecongo.org. The first action that you'll see on freecongo.org is a letter to members of Congress calling on them to cease their support of the Rwandan military, to withhold military aid. So we need people to sign that. We need people to do the same in Belgium, do the same particularly in France. So we really need to step up our efforts around shining a light on what Rwanda is doing in the Congo, putting pressure on those who are supporting the Rwandan government in the Congo. It's not fundamentally different from what we see with the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and their support of the war crimes and crimes against humanity that's being committed in Sudan, except that Rwanda is directly involved.
We've been talking for 52 minutes, but I really want to make sure that we.
Oh my goodness, it's been that long.
Oh, yes, I really want to make sure that we touch on the M23, because that's kind of like the chunk of that report. They talk about M23 pretty much with the ADF and North Kivu and South Kivu, and yeah. So I one of the things that you said was how, and we learn about that in the report, is how the M23 is structured, or if you want, Alliance du Fleuve Congo Alliance, Congo Rivers Alliance. And the M23, by the way, they have been trying really hard to rebrand themselves as the ANC. I'm not sure what that stands for, but people still call them M23. So one of the things that we find is that the AFC, led by Corneille Nangaa, who used to lead the Electoral Commission that essentially declared Felix Tshisekedi winner in 2018. So it's kind of like ironic that you declare this person that, by the way, that everybody knew that he didn't win the election in 2018, as mentioned by TV5, France 24, Financial Times, and all these credible, news sources. And
the Catholic Church, who
Catholic Church,
some 40,000 plus observers,
exactly,
polling stations throughout the country.
But they still presented Tshisekedi as the president. So we were like, well, not we, but people were like, you know what? He's the president. Let's just deal with it. So he essentially imposed Tshisekedi to the Congolese people, so that 5 years later, he's now at the head of a militia group. So I personally find it really ironic. But we found out that he is leading the political branch, but he still responds to a guy named Sultani Makenga, who in 2012. So in 2012, when the United Nations, they do the structure and trying to establish who was leading the M23, they found out that it was led by James Kabarebe, who at the time was, I believe he was an advisor in charge of security of defense of Paul Kagame at the time. But he was
Hmm.
also, ironically and really strangely, he was also the army chief of staff of the Congo when the AFDL, which was presented as a rebel groups, entered
That's
Congo in
a alliance
1997.
alliance of democratic forces.
Yes,
Mhm.
just like the M23 and the RCD, there were the AFDL led by Laurent Desire Kabila, the father of the last president of Joseph Kabila. They were presented as a rebel group.
Yeah.
So James Kabarebe was the army chief of staff. And when they were asked to like leave the country, and you mentioned that the Rwanda invaded the country twice, when he finally left, we just found out that, oh, he was never Congolese. He was actually from Rwanda and became actually minister of Rwanda, and then uh, advising Paul Kagame in defense. And currently, he's the minister of Rwanda in charge of regional cooperation. So to me, it's like they said that the guy was literally facilitating or controlling everything. But this time they're telling us that Nanga is responding or is answering to Sultani Makenga. So Sultani Makenga, I researched on this guy back in 2 years ago actually, and
Hmm.
I was able to find his name in that same 2012 report that the
Hmm.
UN published. So he was born, they don't really know exactly, but the United Nations says he was born between 1992 and 1993, so he will be exactly my age, 31. I'm getting old, and he, I mean, he was born in 1973, but he joined exactly the time that I was born in 1993. Paul Kagame's armed groups, the RPA. So he fought alongside Paul Kagame, who was trying to end, I guess, the genocide in Rwanda. And then in 1996, he joined the AFDL of Laurent Desire Kabila that I talked about, who has an
Hmm.
army chief of staff, a person from Rwanda. And then he mutinied from the AFDL and was arrested by the government of the Congo, right? And then he joined RCD that you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, Rassemblement Congolais pour la Démocratie, was also presented as the Congolese rebel groups, but that were in fact or in reality backed by Rwanda. So he joined the RCD, and then in 2020, in 2003, he joined the newly created FRDC, the Congolese Army, because there was always like a agreement that forces the Congolese government to integrate those people in the army. It's to me, I always find really fascinating people who are killing and raping and
Mm.
plundering the country, but we are in the name of fake security, in the name of peace, we're gonna ask them to join the army when in reality what Congo needs is justice. So 2006, he refused to be redeployed outside of Kivu because that's where that's the region that he's really more comfortable. He knows the region. He can plunder that part of the country because it's rich in minerals and it's closer to Rwanda, the country that is financing or funding him. So and
And
then he deserted. Yeah.
Gaitan, that is the product of the
Mhm.
M23, right? Because there used to be National
Yes, and
Congress for Defense
I
of the
was getting
People.
there.
Oh, go ahead. Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry. Yes,
Yeah, and I
please.
was getting there. In 2007, he joined the CNDP. CNDP that was led by Laurent Kunda, who was like he was wanted by the ICC, and then he ended up crossing to
To
Rwanda, and
Rwanda.
nobody knows what happened to him.
He's still in Rwanda to this day, as
Yeah,
far as we know.
and the CNDP that was co-founded by also Bosco Tanganda. And then
Hmm.
for people who know Congolese politics, the CNDP ended up becoming the M23 because M23 is actually Mouvement du 23 Mars because on March 23rd, I think it was in 2009, the Congolese government signed an agreement with the CNDP that the CNDP claims that the Congolese government never followed through with. So they rebel against, right? They rebel against the Congolese government. And Bosco Tangana, who has been sentenced to 30 years in prison, and he's right now at the Hague for crime against humanity,
International
for war
Criminal Court.
crimes, International Criminal Court, 30 years. That's the guy who co-founded the M23. He's in jail right now for crime against humanity and war crime. And Makenga joined the CNDP, who later became the M23. So that's the person essentially who Kone Nanga, who the M23 that we are trying to present to the Congolese people as because they say political branch, right? Because they can negotiate, they can talk, they can lay down their weapons, but it's really the same people. So what does he really say about this entire human truth or peace that we have been talking about? Like, I'm confused. Brother Maurice, are you here? Did we lose you? Oh, you on mute. Let me unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I lost you. I don't know if you could hear what I was saying, but I'm kind of confused.
No, you really you shouldn't be confused. Really, there's this film. You went through so much history and so many details. There's this film called Africa Morceau, and we had by Jihan El Tari, where she interviewed Kagame and Museveni, all the folks who involved in the invasion of the Congo in 1996. Highly recommend it. I don't know if you can find it or put it in the link for folks, but we'll make that available. But I think, Gaitan, what you've laid out, right? There is a formula and a pattern, right? So one, and there are certain consistencies, right? So you ran down an alphabet soup, right? RCD, FDL, CNDP, M23, right? The consistent thing is that they're connected. They're connected to either the capital in Kigali, Kagame in Rwanda, or in Kampala with Museveni. And when you talk about the political arm of the M23, Congo River Alliance, that's been the playbook from day one. In that the Rwanda has provided, and to some extent Uganda has read the military force, even with Kabila himself. Kabila was a spokesperson of the AFDL. Kabila didn't have his own military, right? So when Laurent Kabila, we're talking about Laurent Kabila, when he was installed in May 1997 in the Congo, he didn't have a military, right? He was a spokesperson, really, of the Rwandan military that invaded the Congo, overthrew Mobutu, installed Kabila, and then they put as the head of the military in the Congo under Kabila, James Kabarebe, right? So that formula of the military, the force coming from Rwanda or Uganda remains intact to this very day. The difference is in the 90s, they got all the way to Kinshasa and they were able to install the people they wanted in Kinshasa. Today, they're occupying Eastern Congo. So that formula among, the line that runs through all those names that you mentioned is that formula. Rwandan military, right, utilizing proxy forces inside the Congo to pursue its interest, right? Militia groups, recruit some Congolese to be the political face because it's a Rwandan operation. That's why they have to get a political arm. That operation cannot represent itself. It has to get a Congolese face to make it appear that this is a Congolese operation. But the report says it itself, right? You talked about Kono Nga, you talked about Sultani Makenga, right? But the report says Sultani Makenga, who continue to receive instructions and support from the RDF, Rwandan Defense Forces, and Rwandan intelligence, right? That's what the report says. So The operation is controlled by the Rwandan Defense Forces, by Rwandan intelligence, and that's Paul Kagame. That's what the report says, and whether it's today in 2024 or back in 1996 with the ADFL, today with the M23 and the the AFC, it's the same source of control. Rwanda, Kagame. And that's what we said. That's why it's 30 years. If you look at how long Kagame and Museveni has been in power, it's consistent with how long Eastern Congo has been occupied and controlled by these two agents of neocolonialism. So we really have to, among all of the alphabet soup, those alphabet soups and of names and the changing of names, that's all a mirage. The source is in Kigali. They may have taken Bosco and Tanganga to the ICC, but it's really Kagame who needs to be in the ICC, right? Because he's the one who's pulling the strings, right? And if you talk to our Ugandan brothers and sisters, they'll tell you that Museveni needs to be there as well. So the main reason, dominant reason why the instability has continued as it has is because these two agents of the empire, Kagame and Museveni, have been protected. They haven't been held to account, right? They've been maintained in power, and they've kept the Congolese people in a death trap. So when we look, we can go from Jules Mutubisi right up to to Makenga, right? They are being controlled, being directed, being supported, being sponsored from Kigali, right? And to some extent from Kampala. So that's why we say, in terms of action, for us, we have to shine a light on it and let people know. If you listen to any news report, they'll say, well, Rwanda denies being in the Congo. I mean, don't even listen to the news report. Just listen to Paul Kagame himself, right? When folks ask Kagame, if he doesn't say we would deny being in the Congo. He said, well, why would we be? Why would there? So you have to. He responds to the question with a question. He said, ask yourself. You listen to when he sits down with report. He said, ask yourself, why would Rwanda be in the Congo? That's what he says, right? Then he goes on to say that Rwanda, that the Tutsi population needs to be protected. He doesn't want to see another genocide. There's hate speech going on in the Congo against the Tutsi population, right? He goes on to tell you why, at least give a rationale anyways, which we know is not the real reason, right? Because the coltan is flowing into Rwanda, where Rwanda is the #1 producer of coltan. They get to book that, record that on their books, which, increases their exports, figures, and that accrues to the benefit of Rwanda, where they are seeking loans and in the international, finance market, and their bond ratings go up because they have, solid books with exports, in the black, and they can get better loans in the international market. They can, enter into agreements with the European Union for access to critical minerals that are found in the Congo. So this is the source of the real source of it. If you get through all of the alphabet soup, get through, the Makengas and the Nangas, who really, as we see, they're replaceable, right? Because we've gone from, Jules Mutubisi to Laurent Kabila to Laurent Nkunda to Bosco and Tanganda. So they're just all of the figures, that have littered Eastern Congo as head of militia groups for the past 30 years. But what is constant is Kagame in Kigali, is Museveni in Kampala, and they're the ones who are pulling the strings. Strings, unfortunately, that has Congolese women being raped to the tune of hundreds of thousands. The city of Goma being cut off, no way out. The only place, we were talking to some leaders in Goma. They said the only place we have left to go is into the lake. We can't go
Mhm.
anywhere else, right? Into the lake because everywhere else is occupied, right? Uh, Hundreds of thousands, millions of people being displaced. So that's what we really need to keep our eye on that and those figures and all of that, all of that, or at least a lot of it would not happen without the support of the West. And right now, we're reports are saying that uh, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, is the one who's really carrying water for Kagame at this moment, and assuring that he's getting the deals, assuring that he's getting the money as Congolese women and children are raped and displaced in Eastern Congo, one of the greatest humanitarian crises of the dawn of the 21st century.
And you said something really interesting when talking about the media. You said we should not even listen to the media. And there has been this narrative about mainstream media and how they really shape narratives, right? They shape the story to fit the agenda of the deep state. And one media in particular, kind of like, I was really surprised, honestly, when that came from them. But then after reading this report, I was like, I'm not surprised. And I'm talking about Al Jazeera, who gave the mic to this woman that has been known to sympathize with the M23. What's her name again?
I don't
I
recall
forgot
her
her
name.
name.
She's a professor. I think she's a professor, a former professor. Uh,
Yes, I need to mention her
but she
name.
represents a type, right? A type.
Bojana Koulibaly, PhD, doctor. I will say doctor because I gotta express some respect, even those who sympathize with those who kill my people. Doctor Bojana Koulibaly, and in that interview that she gave to Bisimwa, Bertrand Bisimwa was one of the leaders of the M23, and he said something really particular that M23 they are literally fighting for the survival. And I know that has been the song for so many years. But
Yeah.
then I start asking him a few questions, right? Like first, why talking about Al Jazeera? Why would they give the platform to M23 that they themselves few months ago, few years ago, decades ago said that the M23 was committing war crime? So they gave them the platform
Mm.
without ever challenging that narrative. And then I was like, hmm, who is funding Al Jazeera? Qatar. So it's always about following the money. And what do we know about Qatar? Qatar has been involved in trading that illicit, that illegal gold coming
Gold.
from the Congo in Ituri with either Primera Gold that somehow got Primera Gold is a company in Congo. Um, People, the civil society in Congo said that the Chisekedis, that the family that are behind it, they got surprisingly to pay a deal, a sweet deal, to pay only 0.25% of taxes for the next 25 years. And that was a scandal because the
And the
people behind it.
monopoly and the monopoly on gold coming out of Congo, right?
Exactly. And a monopoly coming out of gold. And when that gold gets out of the Congo, it goes first to Qatar. And you mentioned UAE. And I'm just like, that makes sense, right? It's really about interest. General de Gaulle, the former French president, said that there is never uh, friends among nations. Like there's no such things as friendship when you talk about relationship with nations. There are only interest. So I
Interest,
was like,
yeah.
okay, that makes sense. So it's probably like me or us Congolese being gullible and just thinking that, you know what, Al Jazeera, because of the work that they're doing in incredible work that they're doing in covering what's going on in Gaza and Israel, that they are the good guy. Now, at the end of the day, when that interest does not follow them, then you're gonna see that change in posture, right? And then the second question that I asked myself when listening to Bertrand Bisimon saying that they are literally fighting for the survival, I asked my question: why can't Paul Kagame live without plundering or killing the Congo? Like, Why does he have to fight so hard? Because what we learn in this report, Brother Maurice, we have never seen, not even in 2012, not even 1998, the amount of money, the amount of soldiers, and also
Mm.
all that logistic that Rwanda is right now putting in the Congo, that the United Nations, for the first time in like decades, they say that the M23 is no longer operating as a conventional militia groups that people can have about stereotypical militia groups in in Africa, right? Like people with like sneakers. That's no longer that. That's not M23 game. M23 is literally an army itself. They have
Well, I mean,
sophisticated
they're
weapons.
more Rwandan soldiers
Yes, exactly.
than
Rwanda
than
soldiers.
so-called M23. So
Yeah,
it's like a misnomer.
but
But
I ask myself why they don't even hide anymore, right? Why Paul
Mhm.
Kagame cannot live without plundering the Congo, without even doing that? And then I'm like, maybe does he have to do with the fact that the U.S. is distancing itself from Rwanda and including Kenya and talking about Angola? I really want to have your take on that. Like, why
No,
do you think
I
that
mean,
Paul Kagame does not want to stop dreaming about the Congo?
I don't know. It serves his interest. It's very simple. It serves his interest. Serves Rwanda's interest. I mean, there are a bunch of factors that go into it. Surely, you can talk about the U.S. Maybe courting. At least this is under Biden. William Ruto, Kenya, seeing him as a suitable partner. But you mentioned the professor. What we see with the uh, Paul Kagame and the Rwandan government, he's got strong connections among universities in the United States. He was just with the Congressional Black Caucus a while back. Um, really strong connections with Howard Buffett, one of the sons of the billionaire Warren Buffett. Strong connection with another billionaire, Adelson, out of Nevada. Strong connections with what's that gentleman, that pastor out of California there. I forget his name now, but just if you look at different levels of U.S. society and U.S. elite, he's well connected. He's consistently present at the World Economic Forum in Davos, and comes to the U.S. as carpet is laid out of the Council of Foreign Relations, where he goes and gives lectures about democracy. That's part of the problem, right? Even just recently, James Caballero himself, I think, was at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington D.C., a well-known think tank, being given a platform. Been told that there's now a Rwandan caucus in the U.S. Congress, right? That's a caucus that's formed to protect
Wow.
the interests of Rwanda. So even when we were doing our advocacy days, those who are Congress people who are, concerned and about the Congo and know what's unfolding, they said, they shared with us, like, listen, the Rwandan embassy, members of the Rwandan embassy staffers are up here more than any other country. They work in the halls of Congress to protect their interests. So, that's why I say that the Congolese diaspora, those who are concerned about what's unfolding in the Congo, really need to step up and engage on every conceivable level. I know some Congolese are saying, well, we really shouldn't be focused so much on the U.S. and they're going to do what they're going to do. But even a powerful nation like the United States, when it wants to go to war against somebody, when it wants to serve its interests, it doesn't leave any stone unturned, right?
Mhm.
It'll try and recruit African leaders to be on its side, right? To get that diplomatic support. So as the Congolese on the front lines, Congolese on the ground, they shouldn't leave any stone unturned either, right? You're going to organize locally, certainly. You're going to push, but you can't leave the diplomatic and the propaganda arm, fallow. You have to pursue your interests on every conceivable level. But what I will say about Al Jazeera, what you're probably witnessing in Al Jazeera, Gaitan, is probably more of, they have so many different journalists and news reporters. So I wouldn't put it on Al Jazeera overall. One of the best interviews where I've seen Kagame challenge was by an Al Jazeera journalist, right? Forget his
Mediasan.
name. No. It's another Al Jazeera journalist. I forget his name right now, but he was imprisoned in Egypt for a long time, because of his reporting. I just don't recall his name right now. But I would put it more on particular journalists, and it's not just Al Jazeera. There are journalists here in the United States that are, give Kagame a pass. But what in reading the report, right? It's you and I have talked about the Congolese government suing Apple, for example, right? So in light of this report, if you read this report, how do you see as a strategy suing Apple is going to affect things on the ground? Apple is not occupying Rubaya.
Brother Maurice, I think we lost you. Yeah. We lost Brother Maurice, who was on his way to talk about the Apple lawsuit and how the Congolese government is suing Apple for essentially exploiting illegally the Congolese minerals. And he was saying that Apple does not own or does not occupy Rubaya right now, and is not being occupying almost a territory that is as big as Rwanda right now. So yeah, when it comes to strategy, we that's what we need to think about like what can we do that would literally bring justice. And when there is justice, there is peace in the Congo, right? Like the lawsuit against Apple will like, if everything goes right, will brings money. And I've talked so many times in terms of that financial compensation and how that will most likely be mismanaged by the current government, and we have seen it. And when you dive really deep into Congolese government, into Congolese affairs, and I know it's probably like boring for some people, but by doing that, you will see that that the Congo, let's see, I'm still online. Brother Maurice just messaged me. I'm still online. Yeah, and you will see that when it comes to the Congo, that the strategy put in place by the current government has never been for the interest of the people. And you might ask yourself why. Well, if you really go back to day one of this regime, of when Tshisekedi was in power in 2018, he came in power how? And I mentioned that 2018 elections, Corne Nanga, who's now leading the political branch of the M23, called AFC, Alliance du Fleuve Congo in English, Congo's River, Alliance. He proclaimed Tshisekedi as the winner. So Tshisekedi cheated. He was never elected. He never received the mandate of the people. So then he led the country for like 5 years. We had elections again in 2023. Election happened the way they happened. We had people from his regime, for his government, that literally had machine literally in his office, like in their office, in the house, and they were casting votes. It was recorded, documented. But they said that he won the election with 73%. Fine, he won it. And you have reports on internal reports about how we have millions of dollars being mismanaged, right? that they created an institution called FUNAHAV that is supposed to take care of the victims of this war that we call unjust. And they drafted the law that they call Genocost law, genocide for economic gain. And in that law, 5% of that revenue, they should get that of the mine revenue should literally come to FUNAHAV, to that institution. So it was estimated that about $21 million, or maybe 27, give or take, enters every month in that institution. $27 million. And out of that $27 million, only $7 million was used was used to pay out Congolese folks who were displaced. And that was estimated to be 150 Congolese franc, which is like $0.6, honestly, that people received, that displaced people received for the whole entire year, or I would say ever since he has been there. So there is mismanagement, right? Like there are you have corruption happening. So there is like no strong, there isn't like a strong institution for that. So you talk about the Apple lawsuit, but you're not talking about what the Rwanda government is doing. You're not talking about what the Congolese government is doing or not doing, right? Like pressuring the Rwanda government again, putting sanctions that you have Rwanda's company still operating in the Congo. You still had Rwanda, Fly Rwanda, whatever that air flight company, still flying over the Congolese airspace. You still have the Congolese embassy functioning, operating somehow. The reason, like, not even enough pressure, real pressure from the Congolese government itself against the Rwanda's government. No sanction, nothing. The borders are still open. You can still cross in and out from Rwanda to Rwanda whenever you want. People want to go to Goma, when I want to go visit the Goma, they go to Rwanda. Easy, right? So we need to really rethink about how we mobilize and how we organize when it comes to the Congo. And that mobilization, that way of organizing cannot be partial. You cannot do that in part. It's like fighting to call for boycotts, boycotting companies and calling for divestment for companies involved somehow in a genocide in Gaza, but at the same time, you're not saying anything against Israel. You're not speaking up against the corruption internally. You're not saying anything, for example, that the Palestinian government right now shut down Al Jazeera. Like, you're not saying anything about those things, but you're only focusing on divesting and boycotting. Your action, even if they are true, justified, but they won't be efficient. They will be incomplete as long as you don't hold those who are really accountable to that. And the reports that we were breaking down, and I'm gonna try and find the time to see if we can do an like on X only, formerly known as Twitter, with Congolese people to really break down and tell us what they think about this situation, what they think about the report, what they think about Rwanda, what they think about Uganda, what they think about a 30-year war of aggression on them, on the people, on the women. It will be really exciting opportunity to discuss that. But what we learn in that report, you see that it talks about the ADF that we mentioned. It talks about the M23, about Uganda, about Rwanda, but it also talks about the FDLR, right? It talks about militia groups that are also involved into war crimes and crime against humanity and rape. It talks about these things. It talks about how the Congolese government is not doing enough to strengthen its military, but instead relies on those rogue militia groups that have committed atrocities. And that's also part of the problem. And when you read that report, it doesn't really talk, and I'm addressing myself now to Congolese people who I believe are fighting the wrong fight. It doesn't talk about, even if it is a problem, right? Even if it is something that we should mention, the fact that President Tshisekedi is trying to change the constitution, pushing for that, right? That report, which is about the Congo, does not talk about that. That doesn't mean that it's unimportant. It just means that priorities in a country that is occupied, the women are being raped, where the children are forced. There must be a priority. Even going and talk about even to face what are the priorities. That's something that we should really start to think and organize and work with organization in the Congo, work with Friends of the Congo, work with General Cost, and work with CAYP and other organizations to see how we can really come together and work for true justice, so that this occupation ends, so that there is really true peace and stability in the Congo, not a peace condition with political agreements from political actors, from Kagame, from Tshisekedi, from Museveni, but really peace and stability whose foundation is justice. That's what we need to do collectively. That's what we need to continue to do, continue to advocate. So, in terms of what to do, you know what to do. We have been saying that. We keep saying that. Freecongo.org. That's literally the website, the to-go website. If you want to know how to take actions about the Congo, we're gonna continue to talk. We're gonna continue to mobilize. We're gonna continue to raise awareness, because what's happened in Congo, and we mentioned that with the Rubaya mine, where the biggest Colton City, if I can call it that way, right now has been taken by foreign agents, foreign army. And from that mine, there are literally, you know, operating illegally. That's how we get the minerals that we get. That's how we get the phone that we have, the laptops, PlayStations, TV, and all these things. So there is always a way to push, right, for actions to be done, and those actions, like I mentioned, are really laid out when we talk about uh, sanctions. When we mention sanctions, we mention about the U.S. government saying stop or ceasing to use U.S. taxpayers to fund war overseas in the Congo, and how we should continue to also push for sanctions against Rwanda as a nation, sanctions against those political actors in Rwanda and those military actors in Rwanda from Rwanda, and how we should, as humanity, as a collective, really reinforce mechanism to stop that illegal exploitation of the Congo, right? People being displaced so that those areas are being mined peacefully, so that those multinational companies don't have to worry about polluting because, hey, there is no one here. You can see. No, they flee the war 2 years ago, a few months ago, 100,000 people displaced. So freecongo.org also talks about that humanitarian help, right? Like, I'm putting this as on point 3 because there is a human catastrophe happening. We need to help them. The Congolese government, as I mentioned, cannot. They are incapable of helping them. They are neither equipped nor do they have the will to help the people. So we need to do that. We need to do whatever we can to help, and that's why I really commend all the nonprofits out there doing the work for the displaced people. All the countries that are operating with or through nonprofits to help the displaced people. So there is that global responsibility as citizen of the world, as citizen of the US, citizen of France, or wherever you are that you're watching us, to make sure that there is transparency into how the supply chains help us get our cell phones. So freecongo.org, this report, like every other time, is really a reminder of what's happening in the Congo. And it's just up to us to really answer to that. It's a call, and it's really up to us to answer that. So org, visit us and see how you can get plugged in to volunteer and to take actions. So thanks again for everyone for watching, for following us, and stay plugged in because we're gonna do a space probably on Sunday or tomorrow. We'll see, during which we're gonna invite Congolese folks to really speak out. So stay tuned for what's coming next. And it was Gaetan. It was a pleasure to be with y'all. So good night.